Now, Iraq has been in the news again and again for all the wrong reasons. An outburst of sectarian violence has killed almost 7,000 Iraqis this year alone. Dozens are being killed every day, and it's making this the most violent year in Iraq in more than 5 years. And it's fueling fears of a descent into the kind of civil war that racked the country back in 2006. Back then, the United States sent in a surge of troops, 140,000 at its height, to defeat al-Qaeda in Iraq. Today, there are no U.S. troops there after President Obama withdrew them in 2011. And AQI is making a violent comeback, and it's feeding off the chaos in neighboring Syria and the rise of al-Qaeda there as well. AQI is finding fertile ground in Iraq amongst the country's minority Sunni population, who are frustrated with the political muscle flexing by the Shiite majority, led by Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. Any attempt at power sharing between Shiite, Sunni and Kurd seems to have fallen by the wayside during 2 terms of Maliki rule. Now, with the body count rising, the Prime Minister came to Washington last week to lobby for increased security aid. It was his first time in Washington in 2 years, and his relations with President Obama are distant at best. Ayad Allawi was the interim Prime Minister of Iraq and a member of the US-led Iraq Interim Governing Council after the American invasion in 2003. He joins me now from his home in England, where he's recovering from knee surgery, and get this, for an injury that dates back to an assassination attempt by Saddam Hussein in the 1970s. Welcome to the program, Prime Minister. Good to see you, and I'm glad to see that you're recovering.
Thank you, Christiane. Thank you for having me on the program.
Headed back to Iraq, you tell me, in about a week, but it's pretty bad there.
Yes.
And I was really interested to hear one of the former U.S. commanders in Iraq, General John Allen, say that the United States could have prevented this bloodletting if only U.S. forces were still there. Do you agree with that?
It's not really. This may be part of a solution, a very small part. But the real solution is to re-engage the political process and have it an inclusive political process. And this is practically the way forward to stabilize the country. Unfortunately, as I speak now, we don't have a viable, inclusive political process. It's not only Sunnis versus Shiites versus Kurds, but rather ex-Ba'athist, ex-army, ex-police, ex-security, ex-judiciary. Those are all being disenfranchised in Iraq. And they have a component of Sunnis, Shiites, Christians, and so on. So really the problem is much more deeper than being simplified as a Sunni Shi'i problem. This is part of the problem. But the real issue
Prime Minister, Prime Minister, sorry to interrupt you, and we'll talk about the politics, but many people believe, including former U.S. ambassadors, commanders, etc., that you can't really do as much as you'd like on political progress without having security. So the question is, do you think Prime Minister Maliki had a successful visit to the U.S.? Do you believe he got what he wanted from President Obama? And what does the U.S. need to do to help, at least in the security area right now?
I don't think the U.S. have a magic stick to improve security overnight in Iraq. I don't know what he discussed in, Maliki discussed in the U.S., but I definitely know that the ingredients of security are not there. The ingredients, the 3 tripod where security lies upon is a healthy political process, institutions which are professional, that can shoulder the responsibility, and the economy, finding jobs for the people in a rich country like Iraq, where 1/3 of the population are under poverty line. On top of this, we have gross interferences from our neighbor to our east, which is Iran. Iran have been trying to meddle with Iraqi affairs, especially after everything was dismantled upon occupation in Iraq. Iran became the most important power, wreaking havoc on Iraq and supporting militias and supporting sectarianism in Iraq.
Prime Minister, regarding the political situation, President Obama urged Prime Minister Maliki, the current Prime Minister, to make sure a new election law gets passed. Apparently it has been passed. There will be elections, according to what's been laid out in a roadmap. Do you have hope for those elections? And do you eventually plan to run for election again yourself?
Of course. I mean, you know, I fought for 30 years for my country to get rid of tyranny. We will continue to play a role in politics, and definitely I'll go into elections. But I don't have that much faith. Last time I won the elections with 2 seats in Parliament, and we were clearly the winners. And according to our constitution, the winner should form the government, or at least should be given the chance to form the government. And the chance runs, according to our constitution, for 45 days. This even chance we were denied to have, and accordingly Maliki was reinstated with the power of Iran, with the support of Iran, with the acceptance of the US. And we are where we are now, unfortunately. People have been betrayed in Iraq as far as the elections are concerned, and they felt that when they went to the ballots and elected their whatever they elected, but yet the results were not to their to the standards of the winner and the loser, but rather to Iran to decide who is the winner and who is not the winner.
So what is your view of where the Sunni population is going to be? I said that they felt frustrated, and this is some fertile ground for the resurgent Al-Qaeda. Is the Sunni population still willing to give politics a chance?
It's getting much weaker. Their resolve towards politics and towards the election is getting much weaker now. Unfortunately, the turnout in the last provincial elections, which was just under a year ago, was in the best 28%, in the best areas, in some of the, like Mosul, like Salah ad-Din and Anbar. And you know, all these provinces now have been demonstrating for the last 7 months, 8 months, and there are lots of atrocities being committed against them. So really there is a lot of faith lost in the elections and the results of the elections, and even on the democracy. There is a lot of faith, and that's why Al-Qaeda is getting more powerful in the country. It's waging a clear war. It's hitting whenever they like or wherever they like, without the government being able to do anything about this.
Mm-hmm. You sort of, I know you're not playing down the violence, but obviously you're playing up the need for a political solution. Everybody would agree to that. But how do you expect to be able to again try to defeat and push back Al-Qaeda? And how dangerous are they right now, especially given the fact that Al-Qaeda in Iraq has linked up with Al-Qaeda in Syria?
Well, Christian, let me tell you, frankly, if people are disenfranchised, if people are oppressed, if people are on the side, if people are not cared for, if they live in poverty, they will definitely go to the extreme. And this is unfortunately what's happening in almost half of the country. And that's why Al-Qaeda finds this as a fertile ground to grow its power, and this is what's happening. Now, what is contributing to this issue is what's happening in Syria on the one hand, and also what's happening in the rest of the region vis-a-vis the influences of Iran and the interferences of Iran to support sectarian issues, as they are doing in Syria, as they are doing in Lebanon, unfortunately.
So how do you expect...
It's very clear. I mean, you know... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, how do you expect to resolve this impasse between, as you mentioned, Sunni, Shiite, Kurd, without an honest broker, without a mediator? You know, the US did used to provide that for you. Do you think you need US mediation at least?
I'm not sure whether, you know, unfortunately, our American friends do simplify things, and they believe that the conflict is only Sunni, Shi'i, Kurdish. It's not. It's much wider, much deeper than this. It all revolves around a very disenfranchising political process, and especially amongst the Sunnis, where they feel that they have been cheated. If this is not rectified, and if things are not being done by the government to open up and have a dialogue, a real dialogue, and to respect the process of democracy and the results of democracy, the elections, then there is no hope but for violence to increase. And this is what's happening in Iraq, unfortunately. And I guess, and I can see that even in the coming elections, there will be more violence, unfortunately, before, during, and after the elections.
Prime Minister Ayad Allawi painting a very grim picture there. Thank you for joining us from London.
Thank you.